Josh Komen, welcome to Between Two Beers.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Seamus. Thanks for inviting me here. It's great to be here. You guys do a fantastic job, by the way.
Oh, cheers, Josh.
Thank you very much.
We're very excited to have you in the Export Beer Garden studio this morning. Earliest ep ever, I think, 7:30 a.m. start. Are you a bit of an early morning guy, Josh?
Yeah, I'm normally up about 6 a.m, but no beers cracked at 7:30.
Yeah.
So.
It's a bold move. I don't know how many sips I'll have.
Yeah, put them on blast early. I like it.
Are you a cold shower in the morning guy still?
Yeah, absolutely. Cold shower for about roughly 6 years now, every morning. Haven't had a warm shower in that period of time, but yeah, I've got a strict morning routine. I like the morning. Yeah.
Run us through it. Run us through that morning routine.
So it's wake up, I do a bit of meditation. I focus on what I've got for the day, where I've been. So it's a bit of a negative meditation, to be honest. It's what could go wrong for the day, and I go along the day and have a look at what could go wrong, and then I always come back to where I am right now and what do I have, and that always resets me. Get out, do a bit of stretching, and then I go outside, expose my eyes to light, get the wood in, get the fire going, cold shower, and then crack into a good breakfast.
Win the day.
Solid.
Feels
It's a solid start.
Feels like you're winning the start. We don't often start shows like this, but I feel like, and by the time you get to the end of the episode, you'll understand. But how are you? How are you right now?
I'm more than good. Yeah, I have to pinch myself sometimes to just sit with where I am right now, from where I've been. Every day is a blessing. Every day is an opportunity, and I'm very grateful, for everything that comes my way, and especially having my wife and daughter. It's just a true privilege to be where I am right now in my life. So I'm fantastic. I have my days, no doubt, not perfect, but all in all, I'm very, very good from where I've been.
Amazing.
We are fortunate to have you because you're down in Greymouth, but you've popped up for a little getaway to Auckland.
The big smoke.
Yep. The big smoke. Yeah. You don't. How often do you get out of Greymouth?
I get around the South Island a lot, not too much in the North Island. My cousin lives up here on the North Shore, Stanmore Bay. Funny enough, my wife and I eloped and we actually got married in Swan Bay, just outside of Stanmore Bay. So, small wedding there. So, I do have a significant reference to Auckland.
Yeah.
But no, not too much. I love to see my cousin, love to see my family. But yeah, it's a really nice place. The city, not so much, but out by those beaches, pretty nice.
Yeah, we've heard the same about Greymouth, but not lucky enough. I haven't been down there. I went there as a kid. We did a tour of the South Island, and I have really vague memories of what it was like. But again, speaking to other guests that we've had on that come from the coast, it's a magical place, and we definitely need to get down there at some point, Steve. Take you and your 4 kids, your
Take
beautiful wife,
mouth.
Bonnie.
Party in the mouth.
Party in the mouth. Yeah.
Party in the mouth.
That's what it was, yeah.
Okay, I feel like yours is exactly the kind of story Between Two Beers was built for, because in researching the set, it's been a ride, and a really good one. We've spoken to so many of your friends and family who just think the world of you. And we're actually going to start with a quote from one of them, who's Ruth Croft, who's one of our favourite former guests. And
Ruthie.
Strap in, because there's a bit here. Ruth says, "When I think of the pre-cancer Josh, he reminds me of a workhorse. He trained hard, raced hard, even partied hard. Sported a mullet for some time, loved double brown and a jelly tip. Josh was tough and had this hard exterior, but cancer changed all that. He has endured some of the darkest depths and demons that many of us won't experience in a lifetime. And through it all, that hard workhorse exterior has surely softened. I even remember in a letter Josh wrote to me which said that if people can learn from my suffering, then it's all justified. This sentence in itself says so much about him as a person. Josh has time for everyone and anyone and understands we are all working through something. He has this ability to bring energy and lift those up around him. I know coming from the West Coast and even from New Zealand, we too often don't talk about what is really going on. Josh always holds space to have those real conversations, to open up and be vulnerable, because when we do that, it always leads to such a richer human experience. There's been many a time when I've gotten down on insignificant life matters. It just takes a split second to think of Josh. His story has a way of putting what's truly important in life into perspective." Just such an incredible passage from Ruth. But I wondered if we could start by you reflecting on your friendship with Ruth and how important it has been to you over the years.
Humbling words.
It's a banger of a testament to a truly amazing character that we're looking forward to meet.
Yeah, no, she's been an amazing friend. We come together. I knew Ruth from primary school, but she went away to boarding school in Ranui in Christchurch. But we come together with running. When she was on her holidays, we ran with an old guy called Eddie Gray. He finished third at the Worlds, 1969 World Cross Country Champs. He was 32 seconds behind Ray Bedford, who was the current 10K world record holder at the time. A real stoic, hard man, but he just loved us kids. Running with him, Ruth was about 16, I was 17, and we'd go for a run, two-hour run over the Paparoa Hills, very majestic place, and then we'd go for a bit of a swim in the Brunner Bridge, jumping off the bridge, and yeah, we just clicked. We were just great friends. Great conversations, and she was just a really, really loyal friend. And then you get sick, and I don't know how to talk to people, but women have a special ability to be able to listen. Ruth never had answers for me, but she had an ear. Yeah, she was living in the States at the time with a scholarship of running, and she'd always answer the phone. And I wouldn't be too in depth with what was going on in my mind, but I was just talking about the physical pain, what was going on. But Ruth was number one and would write letters and emails, and she'd always have a funny joke or something funny to say, put a smile on my face. So it's those simple little things that really held me together, a love from a good friend. But yeah, she's been an amazing advocate, especially in that last 10-year period from what I've been through. She's been, I've got three really good friends, and she's in that category of just that person that's always got your back. She's always there. And she always sees the good in what she's doing, and she's always working to be better as well. Yeah, and I'm very privileged to have her as a friend, so thank you very much for the kind words, Ruth.
On the other side of it, how proud are you of seeing her success, of seeing her just absolutely conquer the world?
Mate, she is just an absolute beast in what she's doing, yeah. And you're right, she's conquering the world, conquering the mountains. She is the mountain queen of the World Running Trail Series. But we always saw it in her. I remember a run with Ruth, we're running up Strongman Hill, and Eddie's had a few beers, and he's that old runner like that, and Ruth's behind us, and Eddie's like, "Where's Ruth?" And all of a sudden Eddie's dying, and Ruth just steams up behind us, and here she was, she's only 16 years old, mate, but she had this stoic strength about her that she's not going to give up, and you could see that she had something very, very special, and you've seen what she's doing, it's just a replication of what she's put in and who she is.
For anyone, after you've listened to this episode, go back and listen to Ruth Croft, because her story is incredible, and the way she thinks and approaches life is really special too. The word perspective she used at the end there has been used a lot with the people we've spoken to about you, and we're going to tell the full story very soon, but I just wondered if you could reflect on your current perspective on life and where you're at.
In my current perspective, I see the good in everybody. I see the pain in everybody, and I'm trying to connect with the heart of the individual, seeing the internal love and pain. We've all gone through something. I know when I used to look out of the hospital window, that's kind of changed my perspective there. I saw the worry, the concern, but the love on people's face. So when I meet people, when I talk to people, I'm not looking at their external worth, I'm looking at their internal worth, where they've been, where they're going to, who they are as a person. Speak to me. I'm trying to open up that space. Also, I see opportunities every day. I think if you turn on the news a bit, it's quite negative. I turn that off, and I step back and I see a lot of good in the world. Even getting on a plane to fly here to be able to speak to you guys, it's just these small little things that we really take for granted, that we don't look at. And I really appreciate those things, because they have been taken away before. The ability to walk, talk, to breathe, to be out in nature, swim in a cold river. Just these really small little perfect things that I bookmark, hold on to, and move forward. So I see the good, I see the bad, but I hold on to the good. And I bookmark that, and I own it, and I hold it tight, and I never let it go.
Well, episode over. I don't think we've ever had the ability in an opening exchange to have so much wisdom dropped and so much like an empathy and presence. Like, we've only met you for the first time this morning. You walked into the room people talk about the energy that you can feel off someone, and you radiate it, and you're genuinely interested. You knew the stuff that we'd done and some of our achievements, and you talk to them authentically, and it's fucking humbling to be in your presence. And the research for this episode for me has been a really emotional one, partly because I was on the other side of your journey as a support person for my mum when she went through her own cancer battle. So it dredged up going back to some of those places and some of those challenging moments, but also, and I'm very, very close to my mum, as I know you are as well. So a lot of what you speak about and the love of your mother and the love for your mother really spoke to me and spoke to my heart. But also, like, your perspective on life, man. Like, I'm a big disciple of the Resilience Project, of Hugh Van Cuylenberg, of Gratitude, Empathy and Mindfulness, and I'm terrible. I'm not terrible. I'm trying to be better at practicing those things, and perspective gets used. We'll get to your journey to Nepal as well, and how that changed you and changed your perspective on things. But it's just such an amazing tale that I just cannot wait to go through with you as well. It's been an absolute roller coaster. But let's start on the West Coast.
It's cheers to mums first, eh?
Yeah, fucking hell, what a guy.
Hey,
cheers to
how
mums.
good are mums?
Cheers to mums.
They are fantastic. And it was your mum that brought you into the world on the West Coast, in the Greymouth. So we've spoken a little bit already about it, but talk about the influence of the place on you as a person.
Yeah, Greymouth's a majestic spot, it really is, and growing up on the coast, it was barefoot freedom for me. I loved it. You know, I lived in a small little street. There was the rugby field across the road, and the ocean was on the other side. So I had access to everything, the bush, you know, the hills, everything there. And I loved sport growing up. That was my go-to. I loved everything I could touch. My love was basketball and rugby league. I played for West Coast in both sports, but running was my pure passion. And at school, I was, you know, my sister would describe me as ADHD. You know, I always had to do something, but running was like a meditative freedom for me, where I could get out and just feel my heartbeat, you know, the sweat on my face, and yeah, it was something that I just loved. And running around the coast, especially out the coast road with Eddie and Ruth, and being with those people in those hills, it gave me such pure joy and appreciation from where I was, you know, and being in nature, it's the most beautiful place in New Zealand in my perspective. But yeah, being out there in the hills was fantastic. But growing up, I was a line mechanic too. I worked on the power lines with hard physical working men, and that kind of shapes the coast as well. We're an area that's had a lot of hardship. It rains a lot. You've got to get it out there and work, do it, perform, keep going, don't complain. And I was a sensitive kid, but once I got onto the workforce, I kind of, didn't know, repressed those feelings a bit. Was that hard stoic man, and my mantra growing up was, I'm going to work 10 times harder than the guy next to me. That's who I became, and that's the identity I bought into. No one's going to work harder than me. And it was to my detriment, really. You know, I'll give you an example. I worked a 23-hour day once. The lines fell down on the coast, and I did a 14-hour day in Reefton, came back, had to go down to Paringa, which is about a 2.5-hour drive, pull the poles over, another pole fell down, and working, then I was out for a run. During the summer, I was out getting firewood, for my uncle and aunties and filling them up, then out for another run. You know, it's just work. It would have been 3-4 hours sleep. And at work, you know, I'd work for my lunch breaks and just keep going. And that's how the coast shaped me. It was hard, stoic, and it's had a lot of pain and hardship as well. And I lost a few good friends growing up, and that had an impact on me, and I never spoke about that. It was just, you know, have a few beers and keep going. And then when I was in the hospital, things changed. But that's kind of the foundation of the coast. Hard work, keep going, don't give up, don't complain. But on that other side, it's got that majestic raw beauty within the nature. And the people are really amazing. And I've been very, very blessed coming from a small community, going through what I've gone through and having that community support as well.
Can we talk about your maternal grandmother, I think it is, as well, and was she a nurse that just had the biggest heart in the world?
Mate, my grandma, great question, yeah, Janie. So my mum watched my father die around 54, he had a heart attack. Cardiac arrest. Nana was by herself with 4 kids, and she was this lady that just gave her heart to patients. So here's a bit of a story about her. She'd do her night shift. She'd see a kid who didn't have their parents with them. She'd go home, make them a sponge cake, bring it back, put it by their bedside, so they've got a sponge cake or something, and then come back. And then she'd be in the kitchen making marmalade, raspberry jam, and delivering it to the Cobden community. Wow. Yeah, and one day I was with my mates, you know, she's carrying 2 bags of groceries over the Cobden Bridge. The barber's coming through, it's windy. I'm like, Nana, get in the car. She's like, no, I've got to walk, got to get these home. She just would not get in the car, but she just had a heart of gold, and she had this quintessential love for her grandkids and just spoiled us rotten and took us down the farm. And yeah, an amazing, beautiful lady.
It seems such a... The way you've described those two things, it's a real kind of paradox, right? Like the harsh nature and the masculine edges to the place, with the soft underbelly as well of that giving spirit. It makes sense now that you unpack it as to why you are like you are. But amazing kind of influences growing up.
100%, yeah. And I worked with this guy called Bobby Boswick. I want to talk about this guy when I first started my apprenticeship. He was, for me, a true role model because my dad worked a lot. Like, he was the overtime king. I didn't really spend much time with my dad as a child, but seeing this guy, Bobby Boswick, he had this strength about him. He was physically strong. He could do anything, you know, carry cross arms and the chainsaw and up the pole, do anything physically. But he had this real respect about him, and he was quiet, he was humble, and people just left Bob alone. And I thought, man, I want to replicate that guy. So I took a lot of his values of what he portrayed as that hard, stoic man. He was physically strong, but for my mind, he was mentally strong too. Yeah.
The evolution of Josh Komen, the person, is an incredible story. But pre-cancer Josh was a bit of a naughty boy. He was a bit of a ratbag. He was a larrikin. And we've had a few sources. It was a bit of, was there public nudity sort of featured a lot through those youthful years?
There was, yeah. I was energetic.
It's good. It's a good description.
Yeah. I mean, we spoke about alcohol before. You know, once I got on a few beers, mate, that was it. You know, I didn't care about girls or nothing. It was like, what could we do for fun? And there was a group of guys that, you know, we like to take our clothes off and do a few funny things. But yeah, I took it to another level sometimes.
I know you've spoken about your old man, but was there a situation where post nude streak? Sometimes streaks aren't nude. Post nude streak, you're in the headmaster's office maybe, or the school office, and your old man can't keep a straight face as you're getting a dressing down. Excuse the pun, or pun intended.
Yeah, we were on a basketball camp. Down in Chicago. We're coming back, and we all ran down the viaduct naked and things. As you do.
Just pause you there. When I first heard that, I was like, wow, fair play. Like, he's downtown Auckland, streaking down the viaduct up here. Naive me not realising there's a South Island viaduct.
Correct. So there's a viaduct between Canterbury and the West Coast. It's a viaduct bridge that goes over the pass, and we all stopped. Well, a few of us stopped, but other guys didn't do it. We ran down there. However, prior to this, there was a teacher who she was a lesbian. Lovely lady, nothing against lesbians, but one of the boys were doing the old dick between the legs. And
the wombat.
The wombat, yeah, that is the wombat. Well, the squashed rat, isn't it?
Yeah, and she was laughing and stuff, and we ran and we did that. So there was a bit of nudity involved. And then we all got suspended. Everyone found out about it. And we're in the principal's office. And for some reason, we're talking about the viaduct, but Dad starts explaining about tucking your dick between your legs to the principal. I've got no idea why, because the conversation wasn't about that.
Like explaining the merits of it, or like
just how it's done.
The technique. Yeah.
And Mum's sitting there, arms folded, like not good, and he's pissing himself with laughter. Like, what? The principal's like, what's going on? And principal goes, do you want to get out of the room, Pete? You know, have some time to yourself. So he got kicked out of the principal's office. I'm getting told off, and I got to stay. So it was so funny. Mum's grimace look on her face, and Pete's just in tears trying to explain how to tuck your penis between
the wombat.
The wombat.
It's such a good reference. But in those moments, you've said, like, in those formative years, you had a challenging relationship with your dad. But in those moments where that character and that humour came through, did that bond you two guys together as well? Yeah.
So the relationship with my dad was the fact that he wasn't around, and I wanted to be seen by my dad. So I had to break this down when I got counselling to unravel this blueprint that I had as a kid. My dad was a great dad. he had one of the worst childhoods I know, and I didn't really understand what that was like. He spent 6 to 7 years in an orphanage, went back to his home, a dysfunctional family, didn't know his sisters, called his sisters that girl, and left home when he was 16. And my mum was probably the best thing that he's ever found. And my dad was working so hard to give me a life that he never had, so I could do my sport, so I could have running shoes, rugby boots, because his father gave him a pair of rugby boots between him and his brother. So he was working that hard, and that was his way of showing love. And I always wanted to show my dad what I was doing in my sport, and he was never there. And I didn't see that as a kid, because you just want your dad to be seen. But my dad gave me this freedom of, he said, you can go out and do what you want, I just don't want the police at my doorstep. So that's kind of my dad. He's a very, very funny guy, loves a laugh, loves a joke, and having that moment with Dad, for sure, that is my dad. And we did have a nice moment there, but we did have a lot of conflict growing up, because basically we didn't understand one another. And it wasn't until I got sick when I started talking we understood, and we're best mates now. He's a wonderful man, but his story is unique to himself, and that's his story, but what he went through is very, very tough. And as a kid, you don't understand your dad's past.
No, you don't. Perspective.
Yeah.
So get us into the running journey. At what age did you realise that you had an incredible motor, that running could be a future for you?
I always knew I had a bit more in the tank, especially in sports and training. I'd always do a bit more. I used to go to the gym as a 14-year-old and then run home, go to squash, then run home. So there was always more to me. But I started competing over in Christchurch, and I started picking up a few Canterbury titles around 15 and 16. And I thought, this is going quite well. But I picked up an apprenticeship at 17, worked on the lines, and I was working hard. And I asked Dave McKenzie, the 1967 Boston Marathon winner, to be my coach. Lives out Denali, great guy. And when I spoke to him, commitments, when you put something out there, you commit to your words. So I was like, no, I've got to really commit to this. So I was about 16, 17 when I asked Dave to coach. And then I started winning 800s, 1500s, 5Ks over in Canterbury quite consistently in the youth grades, and then in the senior men. And then when I was 20, I got to compete at my first New Zealand champs, and I finished a close second at that time. And it was probably in that moment that I thought, man, I could probably represent New Zealand and maybe go to the Commonwealth Games. I'm going to really give this a good crack. So I moved over to Christchurch and put myself in a better environment to kind of flourish. And things were going great. Yeah, really, really good. I loved Christchurch. There was a really good running group over there. I made some great friends too. And
what was your... Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, between two beers, enthusiasts may not realise this, but out of the pair of Stephen and I, I'm not the runner. So I'm not very well placed to put this, but Stephen did the Kipchoge challenge a few years back, and I supported heartily
you were there.
That journey. Can you, Steve, put some context on some of Josh's running? Because I know you've done the research on that, but how challenging that was.
Well, yeah, I think for people that aren't into running, it can be hard to understand how fast these times are. So I did this, it was this big project to display how fast Kipchoge was actually running when he went sub 2 hours. And it was like 2 minutes 50 per kilometre. So I did this, I was really fit at the time, but I set this goal to try and do a kilometre in 2:50 or under. And 8 weeks of intense training, and I got there, and it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. And that was for me as a very fit person, but I got there at 2:50. But to put your times into perspective, like at your pomp, what were you doing? What would you have done a kilometre in?
Oh, it was around about 2:23.
Fuck, that's fast.
2:23. Yeah. It's fast in context with that, but when you're racing like Sam Tanner right now would be like, he's fastest in New Zealand, 1,500 metre run, he'd be like 2:18, 2:17, something like that. He's fast. He's so fast.
It's such a grueling distance, isn't it? That 800 metre or that kilometre. It's like you have to just keep fighting through that pain barrier. You just have to go hard and hold on.
And that's what I loved about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you froth that challenge?
Because mentally I struggled with the 1,500 at a young age, and I was going to step into that. But the 800 I really love physically. I love that challenge where you go out and hit about a 53-second 400, and then you try and back that up. Yeah, I love the challenge of it, just backing myself up and feeling that hurt box around that back bend on the 200, just seeing how much I could pull out. But yeah, I love feeling that internal pain. just pushing myself through. I thrived off that.
We're about to get to the first stumble, but I just wondered if you ever think about how far you could have gone in running if you didn't get sick. Like, do you think about what you could have achieved?
Especially at the start, Steve, when I first got diagnosed, it consumed me, and I had to learn to let that go. The thing is what was. With every small opportunity that I had with the limited knowledge, I did my best. And when I went through that 10-year period, I had to look back and say, hey, man, you could run a 223, 224K. Not many people can do that. You could run so fast. You've got 2 legs. That was an absolute privilege. So that changed my perspective. But at the start, I was consumed in the fact that what could have been, how far I could have gone. I didn't get to fulfill my goal because all my worth was wrapped up in hard work running. That was it. That was my value. And at the start, that destroyed me because I thought my life had ended once I got diagnosed. And so it was a process of letting that go and understanding that it was a privilege to run that fast, and I had that opportunity. Whether I achieved my set out goals, so I have a saying now, make a plan, but don't fall in love with the plan. And I fell in love with my plan at the start. But it is a story of what could have been, but I look at it as what was, and I had that ability to run fast.
Yeah, I'm hoping we can get into pick it up from wherever you want the natural place to be, but at the beginning of your first journey into sickness.
Yep. Sorry. So I was out running with a training partner, Andrew Davidson, great guy, and I just rolled my ankle over nothing, and it just wouldn't heal from there. It wouldn't heal. So I thought, I'm going to go overseas and just get better, just have a break from running. So I had to let go of the New Zealand champs that year. And that 2011 year, I'd run the fastest time, 800 metre time. I actually had the #1 ranking in New Zealand because Glenn Bellum ran the fastest, but he was a junior, so I had the senior. It only lasted for 6 weeks, but I was on top of my game and I knew the form that I was in. And I was devastated at the fact that I couldn't go to the New Zealand champs that year because I knew I could have won gold that year. That's just what I felt. And so I went back home to Greymouth. I competed in a bike race around Brunner. It's a 136k bike race. And during this bike race, I was up with the leaders for about a third of the race, and then I just fell back. And I was just biking, and I collapsed off my bike. And I was like, well, what the heck's going on? Wheeled myself up to Lake Brunner, went in, got a Coke and a Snickers bar, and I thought I'm just low on blood sugar. Sat there for 20 minutes, and I'm just saying, get on that fucking bike and finish this fucking race. Just get it done. And I'm dying, and it was another 42k to go. So I'm breaking off the pieces bit by bit because I know the area. And I finished the line. I said, I'm never riding a bloody bike again. And I sleep for a week. I'm having night sweats, hallucinations, all this stuff. And I've gone to the doctors in this time, but they never took bloods. They just gave me some antibiotics and a prescription for that. And I woke up one morning. I had this massive swollen eye, and I collapsed at the sink. And my brother was there. He picked me up. He rang up my auntie. He goes, get him up to the hospital. Went up to the hospital. And I remember being up there with Mum when she came, and I was crying. I was like, something's not right. Something's not right. Something's not right. But still, they were trying to drain this eye, and they hadn't taken bloods, and were like, take some bloods. And they admitted me for the night. Finally, they'd taken the bloods, and then I was about to fly out 2 days to Thailand with my mates, and they came in. I'm saying, I can't go, I'll be a bit later. But then during that time when Nath was there, my family were there, they were getting caught up. I saw this look on their face, and this doctor came in, he was a professor, and then he gave me the diagnosis that I had leukemia. And my mum just cried hysterically, and I was like, what have I done? That was my instant thought, what have I done? I didn't know what leukemia was. It sounds like a horrendous word when you look at it in the letters. Had no idea what it was, but it was a cancer of the blood, and I just seen the distraught on my family's face, and I'm so confused. What is this? And he goes, you're going to have to go over to Christchurch to the bone marrow unit to get specialised treatment. It's probably going to be about 7 to 8 months, a long time. I was like, what? So in that moment, I was so confused in what was going on. I didn't even understand cancer. For me, when you hear the word cancer at that time, at 23, it was a death sentence. And leukemia was something completely new, but seeing the look on my family's face, that cut me up more. So that's when I just shut the door. Pushed them away. So that's the lead up into that cancer diagnosis.
I've been on the other side, again, to draw from personal experience. I've been in the room when a doctor tells a loved one that they have cancer, and it is, it's like the oxygen just goes out, and exactly what you've said. It's like, oh my God, that's it. Having pushed people away, did you then seek to backfill that knowledge gap to try and understand what you had, or did you just think, I'll hunker down and just deal with whatever comes?
No, good question. Yeah. So, as you say, the distance. When that diagnosis, I had an old guy across the road that day. He didn't do a very professional job of telling me what I had, and he's like, "My mate died from that. My mate died from that." I'm like, "Huh?" But yeah, so I went into pushing them away. But I like to know. I like to know information and what I'm talking about, what I've got. So I bought these books and understood leukemia and learning all this new terminology and the immune system and stuff like that. I wanted to know, and probably dug in a bit too much and put myself in a position like, holy shit, this is really, really, really serious. And the doctors were giving me great information, but it wasn't in the in-depth what I was learning in books. But hey, books are on a whole different scale. They don't look at me as an individual, and that's what my doctor was really good at, looking at me as a person. Peter Ganley, fantastic guy. He'd always say, hey, you've been a great runner. That's the foundation that you set, that you're going to get through this, and he always looked at the positive. He was a great doctor. But yeah, I dug in deep trying to research of what was going on in my blood, and I ended up having a very, very poor prognosis with numerous genetic mutations, which put me in this poor category.
Can you tell us about the chemo journey?
Yeah. Yeah, I never experienced chemo before, but there was a guy at work who'd come in after my family. He had gone through it, and I asked him what it was about, but he had a different cancer, and he gave me a brief description, but leukemia is completely different. So I'm in an isolation room with a double ventricle door, air pressure room. So it's an isolation room, little tiny room, about half the size of this room. And the chemo itself, the first round was horrendous. I was used to pain, good pain, running on hills. Love that pain, as we spoke about before, Shay. But this was a different pain. My stomach lining got stripped away and my stomach shrunk to the size of a walnut, and it was the first time I was on morphine, having boluses of morphine. I just haven't felt that pain before. And I didn't know when it would end, and it just stripped me apart. My hair was falling out and all that stuff. And I remember Carol, she was retiring, and she's coming in with these boluses of morphine, injecting them into my stomach. I was like, fuck off, I don't want your bloody morphine, just leave it, I'll do it myself. And she's like, well, left me to it, and I was like, holy shit, what did I just say to her? And she was retiring that week, so I wrote her a letter and gave her some chocolate. Someone gave me, I was so sorry about that. And she said, don't worry, love, I've had a lot worse than that. And I thought, wow, what goes on in these rooms? Yeah, so the pain was tough in that first round.
It's impossible to know. It's a hard story to retell, but it's very important too. Even just that, you just don't get a picture of exactly how hard it is. But the reason that the importance of sharing your journey is to talk about rock bottom and when things got to their worst because of where you've got to and how you dealt with it. And so with that in mind, I was wondering if you could talk to the experience of when you were at your lowest.
Yeah, definitely. Brings good context to the story. So I had about 2 to 3 months of treatment, just this physical pain, spewing up, shitting myself, all this different pains that's hard to describe. But there was a mental pain lingering, and that was not being able to communicate, bottling everything up, pushing everyone away. I mentioned earlier I spoke to a few good friends like Ruth, but not really telling them what was going on. So I was like, no, I'm good, but the physical pain's really getting to me, and da-da-da. So it was 3 months, and during my treatment, you'd be a month in hospital, have your chemo, you wait till your neutrophils come back, and then you get out for 2 weeks. I was staying at this place called Ranui House, an amazing place. Month in, then 2 weeks out, and after the third round I was out, and I pushed my mum away, said, go home, I can't have you here. But she came back. So she's gone out this day to go get some groceries. And this pain in my head, like all that value and all that worth of my hard work and running, that's where I thought my life was. And I thought I had nothing left. You're weak, you're losing. It was just building up. It just cascaded. You're nothing. And then it's like, you're fucking nothing. It's just bang, bang, bang. And I didn't know how to deal with it. And I thought, I've just got to end it. And it's hard to talk about, but I have to talk about it, and I always get quite emotional. So in that moment, I walked to the balcony. I used to work at heights, and I thought, let's jump. You know how to do this. And I was on the 5th or 5th level. And I was up there, and I thought, yeah, this is it. You can end this. You can get this pain. You can control this. This is your way of controlling it. Step over 1 foot, and I feel this gust of wind, and whatever you want to call it, and I turn around. I see my mum's cup of tea there. And I just feel her love come to me, and I say to myself, you can't put this pain that you're feeling inside your mum, imagine. It came to me, her love, and it pulled me back. It just pulled me back, and I sat down, and I had my bald head, and I've just got my fingernails in my hair just screaming like, what's going on? What's going on? and I had to figure something out, so I took 2 Zopiclone pills, went to bed. Mum didn't even know what happened. Went to sleep, and the next morning, the canteen coordinator was coming around for that 3-month period and offering me stuff, and I always say no. And I knew they offered counselling. And this was me using my strength at that time. I recognised I needed help. I had a weakness, not being able to talk, and I needed to understand what was going on. And so I rang her up. Her name was Sarah, lovely lady. She organised counselling in the space of 2 days, and that unfolded my path of being able to communicate and understand what was going on. And yeah, he gave me some great tools, and it was just a fantastic thing to do.
So is it as linear as that was rock bottom, that was the hardest moment, and you came back and then you sought counselling, and that's the beginning of the path to the Josh that you are today?
It was a start for sure. It was a start, but there were harder times to come, and I did feel suicidal throughout the journey, but I've gathered some tools to be able to mitigate those thoughts, push them away. And to be fair, they still come now some days. My body's not perfect. I cramp up at night and you have these thoughts, but I've got the ability now to recognise, create that space and push it away. So this was the journey of learning that 10-year period. So this was the start. And he'd take me in, we'd have a conversation. Our first conversation was about my childhood, and I'm like, why are we talking about my childhood when I've got cancer? But it portrayed a bigger picture of what was going on, how my identity was caught up in running and hard work. It was like, no, there's more to you than just that. That was just a part of your life. So it's separating the two. It wasn't me, Josh Komen, that wanted to die. It was just this pain and situation that I was in that wanted to die. And I had to separate the two. And he gave me some great books to read, and I started reading books, and I started journaling a lot, going back to my diary writing. Then I went into visualization. I didn't really know much about meditation back then, but I kind of was doing it, just visualizing, because I used to do it in my running. So I was just visualizing myself, getting out of hospital, back on the Paparoas, into the surf, doing things like that. And I started writing a few goals out of what I wanted to do. And I'd write a heap out, then I'd cross them off and eliminate them to about 2 or 3. And I focused on those 3 things. And I used to look out my window and watch the trees and pretend I was part of the tree, and kind of just taking myself internally to externally. And then I started talking, talking to my dad, talking to my mum, talking to people I trusted. I didn't tell everybody what was going on inside. But talking to Ruth more openly. My mate Hamish, he'd come over and he'd just sit next to me and we'd have a chat, and I'd be open and honest with these people, of what was going on. And they never had answers. They just listened. That's all it was. And it just helped take that allostatic load, that total stress load off my shoulders, to help me go forward with a lot more clarity. But also too, I read a book by Viktor Frankl. And I've still got this book. It's next to my bedside shelf. And Man's Search for Meaning. Fantastic book, and basically the crux of it was like, you've got to find meaning within your suffering. Just a backstory about Viktor Frankl. He was in Auschwitz and Dachau for X amount of time, and he suffered a lot, and he voluntarily put himself in Auschwitz at the start. He had the opportunity to get out of Austria, but he stayed with his mother and father, went into these prisoner of war camps and got through, and he's made up this thing called logotherapy, which means meaning therapy, finding meaning within your suffering, finding purpose. And there was a quote in there too I really liked. It's like, when we're no longer able to change a situation, we're forced to change ourselves. So I had to change myself, and I really love that book, and I admire that man. I find him a close friend in a way, because I've read his book that much. So these little things really helped me go forward. So that was the start of the journey, Steve, yeah.
Second time in a few episodes that Man's Search for Meaning has been referenced on the pod. Russell Packer, who we had on recently as well, spoke about it as well, and the impact that it had during his time in jail around choice and the choices that you make.
Yeah.
It's
the last of the human freedoms. Yeah. It's a choice. conscious choice that we can make. And he spoke about that in his book. You know, when everything's stripped away, down to your bare nudity, you still have a conscious choice to choose one's way. So I made a choice and a promise to myself, no matter how hard it got, I'm not going to take my life. And that was the promise I wrote down in my diary. No matter how hard it got, I'm not going to take my life. And I wrote that numerous times, and that was my promise.
70 times?
70 times.
A day?
70 times a day for 7 days.
Like you've packaged up the learnings really well. How long was that process of the first conversation to, I guess, being open and honest with your family? Can you timeline that?
In particular with my dad, it was kind of straight away, because he come into my room one day and I was in immense pain and he started crying, and I hadn't seen my dad cry. And I was like, my dad loves me. He's been watching me. And then we started talking, we started talking genuinely for the first time. I understood his childhood, and, we got to know one another. And that was big for me. And that was what David Gard, the counsellor, he's like, you got to start chatting to your dad. And yeah, that was huge for me, being able to connect with my father. Yeah.
After this, these tools you've got, and you're working your way, and you start to turn a corner, and you beat this thing. So we're on the way out of it.
Yep.
How much of a role did humour play in your rehab? How important was humour?
Yeah, it was so good. My uncle Kev, he's great. He always used to say, if you're not laughing, you're dying. So I used to, on the cards when I said thank you to the nurses, I could see their shoes, because I'm lying on the bed and the first thing I'd see was their shoes. So I'd say thank you, and I'd write their shoe on there, and they'd always laugh. The nurses were fantastic. I mean, Seamus, you might have seen the nurses in action, and they were great. They were always trying to give me a laugh. And my dad was funny, and he was always giving me a laugh too. You know, one incident with Dad, he wrote my car was for sale and put it outside in a public space in Christchurch, and I was getting all these random phone calls. It was an old car. and one guy rings up, he's like, oh, I'll swap you some pink slips for your car and all this stuff. And I'm like, what's going on? And Pete comes in, he's like, oh, did you get some phone calls? I'm like, you bastard. Yeah, so little laughs like that, sustain me. It was just, yeah.
It's an absolute roller coaster, isn't it?
It is.
That period, or that cancer journey for everybody involved. But you're right in terms of laughter and lightening things up.
Yeah.
It's critical in terms of the human kind of journey.
Oh, we're meant to be connected, and that's when I do a lot of talks and workshops. The foundation of health is connection. When we talk about laughter, we'll open up that dopaminergic pathway. We're releasing dopamine, which has an essential effect on the immune system as well. So we've got this feel-good molecule about us, just by laughing. And it,
there's a dark humour story coming up, I think, as well, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure if this one will have ever come up at one of your talks, but I've been on the phone with your mate Ben, he's given me so much gold. And one of them was about, part of this journey is if you wanted kids down the line, you had to put some you had to put some specimens aside in case that was coming down the track. Yeah. And he retold, I was wondering if you had a version of it, your experience producing that.
Yeah, just a bit of a backstory on Ben first, because he's been a bit of inspiration in my life as well. He's been through his own ordeals. So in the mitochondria it produces ATP, adenosine triphosphate.
I'm nodding my head like I know what you mean, but
yeah.
I'll go back and actually research what you're talking about.
So he's producing this thing called KTP. It's crazy. It stands for Kleenex tissue papers. And that was a genetic mutation from a severe disease that lasted like 4 or 5 years, but still lingering from man flu. Really? Yeah. So he's a huge inspiration going through what I went through. So thanks, Ben. Still lingering a bit. If you go around to his house, there's a few KTP lying around, a few tissue paper.
I like the slow.
Yeah, it took me a while on the
slow hit.
And then I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. We're going after Ben.
Yeah. So he's stitching me up here. Yeah, so I got diagnosed, you're going through all this confusion. You're talking about chemo and you're learning about the immune system and all this stuff, and what's going on? Then they come in with this cup, like, you got to take a sample. I'm like, I've already taken a blood sample. It's done. No. You got to take a sample of your semen, your sperm. You got to make a collection. You might not be able to kids. It's going to fry your testicles and all that. I'm like, fuck, this is the last thing I want to do. So they give me a magazine. I don't have a smartphone. magazine, I have to go to these toilets that just reek, you know, they haven't been cleaned. Oh man, this is going to be dreadful. And I'm like, literally going, yeah, okay, go, da. And then I start to get woozy, you know, woozy. I'm like, oh, I've got to get this done, you know, this is important, got to get this done. So you're going back and forth. And you're trying to get this thing done. And then the climax comes, and like I'm like leaning over, I miss half of it, and I'm like grabbing the pipe to try and pull it into the car. Oh. I'm like, shivers, I'm never going to be able to have kids. This sample's terrible. And I go back, and I'm like, lie on my bed, but I can't believe we brought that story up. But yeah,
yeah. His telling us it was ask him about the worst wank of his life.
The saddest wank.
That was the saddest wank of my life for sure. It was dreadful. The toilets weren't cleaned. It was the last thing I wanted to do.
Faced
and I had
with
no
your
idea.
own mortality. Yeah, just like, what is going on?
What's going
this
on?
is not what I want to be doing.
Scrape the little dregs off the side into...
Literally.
Yeah.
Into the cup.
Yeah.
You're pulling the pipe hard, just pushing everything in there. Oh, yeah. Yeah. The worst. Yeah.
Yeah.
But nobody tells you about that.
No.
Nobody speaks about that.
I was not prepared for that at all. It was
Right.
about chemo, it was about cancer, it was about diagnosis, about prognosis, all that, and then all of a sudden you got to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we had the opposite. We had Rebecca Stott on recently, football fern who's played in the Women's World Cup. Same thing. She had her own cancer journey, came back, is now playing international football, but soon after she started, IVF. And I fucking had genuinely no idea. So I think these kind of conversations are great in terms of informing people what they might be in for should the unfortunate happen to them, because they're realities of the situation.
Correct. Store up the wank bank.
Imagine, just for a second, imagine if you had passed out during the act and someone had to come into the bathrooms and find you.
No, that's what I nearly did.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Imagine that.
Yeah, trowel around ankle, stick mag on the side. Just a grim, dirty
upside down.
cup. Oh,
I'm not sure how many other podcasts go from suicidal thoughts to wanking stories in the space of a few sentences, but I think we managed to get it to work.
Just for the audience, the wanking story came first before the suicidal.
Oh, okay, good to know. Yeah, important to get that timeline around the right way.
Okay, it's good. Yeah, okay, it's good. Okay, let's work out of that first. So you're beating it. So talk us through coming out the other side and when you saw the light and when you thought that this wasn't going to be part of your life anymore.
Yep. So I'm still getting counselling once I've beaten it. Got into remission, but I get told there's a high chance this has come back because it's an aggressive cancer, poor prognosis. That's great. And I really didn't know what to do with that, so I went home and all I did was get into the surf. I loved surfing at the time. I was at Cobden Breakhead, nice left-hand break. And I was just out there with no swell and just thinking about life in that last year. You know, at the start I was one of the fastest in New Zealand, had all these dreams and got cancer, one of the sickest, and then I nearly took my life, and I'm processing all this stuff. So it wasn't like I was pushing people away. I was just trying to figure out who I was and where I was going. And the surf really helped that, and I was out there just enjoying my time that I had, and I was doing a lot of writing and meditation. Meditation was huge. And then I get a phone call from Ben. And it's a missed call, and I ring him back and I say, hey mate, what's going on? And he's like, hey bro, do you want to go to Everest Base Camp? And I was like, mate, are you kidding? I've just had all this stuff go on, and nah, probably not. And then I'm in the surf a couple of days later. I'm like, I just knew how short life was, and going to Everest Base Camp was a big dream of mine. I always wanted to go there. And I just hit the water. I said, nah mate, break down that fear barrier and you've got to go. You've got to go. So I rang him back. I said, yeah mate, we're doing it. So 5 months after my last round of chemotherapy, I flew into Kathmandu, and it was just absolutely incredible. It was my first real overseas experience in Australia.
I was going to say, pause there. What's your overseas travel experience at that moment?
Yeah. So it's just been over to Australia, really, at the Gold Coast, Brisbane, Sydney, things like that, going to a few league grand finals. But yeah, nothing compared to Kathmandu. Like sensory overload, but in a positive way. It was like, whoa, this is so exciting. There were guys tuk, and I saw my guy and took me in the tuk, and we're driving down Kathmandu around the back alleys, and I'm like, wow, this place is incredible in terms of poverty. I've never seen that before. You see people homeless on the street, but this is completely different. There's open sewageways, there's kids with nothing, And this was a life-changing experience for me. I'm driving and I see these kids playing in rubbish. Some were naked, some had clothes on, and they were playing and they were waving to me with beautiful smiles, waving. So I waved back, and then it just hit me, how lucky and how privileged was I to suffer in such good conditions. I was in hospital. I had my mum, I had counselling, I had food, I had a soft bed, I had the adequate treatment to get me right. And these kids had nothing, but yet they were making the most of what they had in front of them, which was rubbish, and their friends next to them. And I thought, wow, thank you. Thanks, kids. So, yeah, that just lifted me up a bit too. So that was another learning event. We always learn. And people always teach you something. And I learnt from those kids in that alleyway in that moment.
This Everest expedition is great. And Ben has given me a bunch of talkers, which I'm really excited for you to tell. And he kind of painted the picture of, you're 5 months out of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
He's there, he's physically fit, he's sort of on top of the world, and he sort of dragged you along. And there's about 4 stories, so I'm just going to sort of go through them and get you to talk to them.
By the way, I feel like as well, before we rip into this, like, a story to base camp of Everest is worthy of a podcast on its own. Like, fuck me, not many people that I know have been able to do that. So not only to do that, but to do that after your first challenge, and we'll go through some of the other challenges as well, is a fucking incredible story. But I've taken Stephen's thunder. Go with your bullet points.
So he talked about hitting his altitude ceiling. And so, again, he was fit and healthy, and you were much more fragile. But he got to this place where he thought he needed to stop. Mm-hmm. And he talked about the character of you saying, no, we're not stopping. We're going to keep going. Like, you took the lead. You talk about that?
Yeah, I think we're in Tūrangawaewae, and he was quite concerned. I got altitude sickness, so I needed to stay. And he wanted to stay a few more nights. And I said, no, we're doing one night and we keep going. We start something, we're to keep going. And we pulled through, and then we got to Everest Base Camp, and I wanted to go to Mount Kalamata in the morning to see the sunrise over Mount Everest and see that. And that was just shy of 20,000 feet. It was about 19,500 feet, I think. Mount Cook's at 16,000 feet. So I wanted to go up there in the morning, and he's like, no, we've come here and we've done what we needed to do. I'm like, no, bro. We're going to go see the sunrise over Mount Everest. We're going to go see this. We're going to hit this. And he's like, no, I'm too tired. We've done it. I'm like, no, we haven't. It's at our back doorstep. So, yeah, it was step by step. We got there very, very slowly, but, that was still a small, perfect moment I talk about, Seamus. Watching the sunrise come over Mount Everest, waving to Sir Ed up there, it was a beautiful moment. And it's something that I hold dear to my heart in that moment, sharing that experience with Ben. It was absolutely beautiful, very majestic, and just taking those opportunities when they present themselves. We're down and out, we're tired, but you're never going to get that back again. So we had to take it, and I dragged Ben up there, and I'm sure he's grateful for that opportunity as well.
Down and out and tired is a bit of an understatement. Tell us about what was really happening with you, because he said you would sort of hike for 10 hours a day and then you'd come back and you'd crash, and you'd be 16 hours and you'd be sort of, it looked like just absolutely out to it, and then you'd snap up the next morning and you'd go again. What was internally going on with you?
You've only got one opportunity, mate. You've got to keep going. And that's the West Coast mantra that's coming out of me too. I haven't really fully let go of that, but I'm here for this experience. I've got to make the most of it, and I can't turn away. I just can't. This is the goal that I've set out to achieve. I've got time to rest if I need it, but we've only got a limited time to be able to get up there in that period, to get up to base camp. And, life is so short, and sometimes we need to just grab. I do believe we have this thing within ourselves that we don't even understand, and it's this inner potential, this capability that we haven't tapped into. And I found a lot of that when I was running, but I found more of that when I was in chemotherapy, getting through cancer, and I knew that I can get more out of myself no matter how tired I was, because this was an experience, as I said, that I'm not going to get back again. And I had to make the most of that, and I had to go inside myself and say, hey, Josh, you're here, you're alive, get after it, man. Just get after it in the most positive way. It wasn't in a negative, derogative way, like, if I can get going. It was like, hey, man, embrace this moment. Get after it, son. Yeah.
So whose idea was it to get naked at the top of the mountain before the Sherpa chased you down?
So my naked days are going away a bit, you know. So Ben's calling this one out, and he's like, "Yeah, let's get naked, and we start taking our clothes off. And like, no, this is the most sacred side of kind of Nepal. No, I'm like, okay, fair, no, absolutely, yeah. So we just get a photo in our singlets. I have my grey mouth singlet on, given the old shaka, and yeah, so we did that. But yeah, they called us out on that, which is fair enough. We didn't know. Yeah, and absolutely, we didn't want to disrespect anybody.
Yeah.
I imagine frostbite at that kind of altitude would be a challenge potentially as well. And that, like cold exposure for some of those dingly danglies would be a risk.
Yeah, there was nothing between. Yeah, nothing between. Yeah, Mount Kalabatar is still the coldest day experience I've ever had, going up there at 19,000 feet. Yeah, it's cold.
So this next yarn, I think, captures the Josh Komen spirit as well as any. And it's when you're coming back down the mountain, and he told the story of that you were crook, you were in a bad way, but due to a pre-existing condition, like they weren't able to come in and chop you out or help in any way.
Yeah.
And I hope I've got this right, but he told a story about like you were carrying a backpack and you were fragile and you were struggling with it, and he thought that it was his opportunity to help you out, and he kept saying, "Let me take your backpack, let me take this, let me help you down." And he said you wouldn't allow it, but then you stopped for a break at one point, and I don't know where you'd gone, but he took your backpack and he went off down the mountain. He's like, "No, I'm going to help him out. This is for his own good." And he said, once you saw him, you came charging after him and were basically swinging punches and swearing, and you were furious. And he said he didn't understand it at the time, but now in reflection he does, that this was your dream, this was your goal, this was your challenge, your mindset was you're going to do this in this way, and he was trying to change that.
Yeah, he's bang on the money. He nailed that. So I was coming down, had the altitude sickness, and the body's struggling, and then I got that deli belly, and I'm spraying walls in the tea houses.
He said ceilings.
Ceilings, yeah.
He said ceilings.
He said he's never seen
Well, he didn't
shit hit the ceiling before.
He didn't come into my hospital room, so I'd seen worse. So I had that perspective. But yeah, he's right. It was my dream, and I knew my cancer could come back. And one of my values is if you start something, you finish it with your own pack on. That's your load. You carry your load. And for me, it was carrying my stuff in and carrying my stuff out. That's the whole adventure. That's the journey.
Was that physical and a metaphor as well?
Yep, physical and a metaphor, for sure. Yep. And he took my backpack that time, and he's offering, really kind, and I understand that. And I said, no, if you start something, you finish it. I need to take this bag. I want to get it out. And he did take it. And I still hadn't been, I'm still going for, I'm talking about meditation and mindfulness practices here. I still haven't fully grasped it. And I probably responded in the wrong way. And I come down, oi, fuck, what are you doing? Take my bag. You don't do that, I wasn't really swinging, but I had my arms up and stuff. And he's like, oh, put it down. And I grabbed it off and like physically pull it off him and got it off. And he just walked off. And I carried it out, got to Lukla airport, and yeah, things were good. But we went to Thailand afterwards and managed to talk about it in a lot more clarity. And he could understand that this was my adventure. There was a good chance of my cancer coming back. And for me personally, I needed to carry my pack in, and I needed to carry my pack in to make it the true, whole, quintessential adventure that I was after.
Those open and honest conversations with your friends, they must have galvanised those friendships for life now. And do those carry on in everyday life? Not just the big issues, but the small everyday issues as well? Yeah.
I mean, I think about my friends all the time, and they come, those bookmark moments I spoke about, they just come to my heart and go through my mates, and then I'll just give them a call. And then we have some great conversations. Ben tears me apart, but we have a lot of laughs, and we have a lot of truthful, honest talks, especially about being a father now. He's a father of two, and he gives me a lot of good advice. My mate Hamish, I ring him up and have a good yarn to him. And Ruth too, we don't speak too much about her running. It's just more, how are you doing? What's going on inside? We really open up that conversation to understand what's really going on in their life. And it's really sent the foundation of a true friendship that definitely won't be broken.
So you conquer Everest, you get home, you rest up, I imagine, for a while.
Yep.
Link us up to the next step, which is your adventure into skydiving.
Yeah, so I get from Nepal, we go to Thailand to just rest a bit, and I backpack around Asia for 3 months and go around Cambodia and just hitchhike around. It was absolutely fantastic, and I'm asking myself, what else could I do? what's a childhood dream? I want to get back into my running, but first I wanted to become a professional skydiver, and I found out there's this diploma in commercial skydiving that's based in Methven, just outside of Christchurch. And I thought, right, I'm going to enrol in that and just go jump out of planes for a bit. So I got back from Asia and was in Methven, I think July 2013. And yeah, it was just amazing. I met some incredible people from all around the world, but it was the most freest moment of my life. Not jumping out of the plane, but pulling the parachute and just floating down. I've just never felt so much freedom. Just being up in the Southern Alps and, just doing something that's completely unnatural to the human body. But also, too, for me, it was overcoming that fear as well, being able to jump with control, because that was still lingering in me. I was thinking about jumping off a balcony, and if I did, I wouldn't be able to land safely. So the skydiving, for me, was overcoming that fear barrier about being able to jump but land safely. So that was a huge part of skydiving as well, but I did want to do this as a young kid and be an instructor, and it was fantastic. I absolutely loved jumping out of planes with some really good friends that I made as well. Completely different people from all walks of life.
How many jumps have you done?
I did about 210, which sounds a lot, but it's not much. My brother's the skydive instructor right now, and he's hit just over 1,000 jumps.
Yeah.
So
Is every jump different?
every jump's unique. It is, yeah. Every jump's unique. It's got something special about it. You don't know, because when you're jumping with people, you don't know what's going to happen or how it's going to unfold or what your parachute's going to do on opening and how the landing's going to be. And you've got that wind factor as well and how you're going to hit the relative wind. So every jump's unique, yeah.
But it was during a jump that you realised that your cancer had come back?
Yep, it was in that jump. So it's towards the end of the course, and I went up to do a 18,000 jump with my mate Ivan, and we're up there, we're sucking on oxygen, and then I jump out, and I see one of them, then two of them, then three of them, then 10 of them. I'm like, fuck, I'm getting hypoxic here. I've got low red blood cells. So I pull my
Shit, that's while you're in free fall.
Yeah, so I realise it straight away, so I pull my chute, and I just spiral down. Get down to altitude as quick as I can, and I'm lying there, and Ivan comes up, and he's like, what was going on, man? What did you do? And I was like, didn't tell him, but I knew. So I enjoyed a few more jumps at lower altitude until I had my appointment, which was only 4 or 5 days away. And I looked at my hand, and I had these purple dots, which signified low platelets. Platelets are clotting factors in the blood. And I confirmed it for myself, went in, saw Peter, told him, he knew, sends my blood through the lab, comes out, and he's like, yep, you've got cancer again. Yeah.
That's a gut punch.
It is a gut punch, but I was aware that this could come back, and mentally I was more prepared, but physically I wasn't prepared for what was going to unfold, because it was going to be a completely different level physically, and I didn't understand what was going on there, but mentally I had all these tools, and I was very grateful for the opportunities that I've took in that 11, 12-month period, being a skydiver, going to base camp, doing all these cool things. So I had acceptance there. Like, I'd done the best I could with what I had. I've achieved some childhood dreams. So mentally I was prepared on that aspect, but the physical aspect of what was going to unfold, yeah, it hadn't computed yet.
Is there an anecdote where you took your family or family members up for a skydive?
Yeah.
As well?
There is, yeah.
After you realised what was happening or what was coming?
Yep. So I got that diagnosis, and I had cancer, and we were going to start treatment in about 2 weeks. I had some blood transfusions, so I was kind of good to go. So I said to my family, let's go for a jump together, one last hurrah, let's do that. So yeah, it was a wonderful day.
When you frame it one last hurrah, is it one last hurrah in terms of a skydive, or are you preparing yourself maybe for a finite end?
Yeah, I'm contemplating my own mortality, yeah, because I understand the significance of this coming back, and the fact that I'm going to have an allogenic stem cell transplant, we'll talk about later, and I possibly might not be able to do this again as well. And I wanted to share this with my family because I loved what I was doing, and it was they hadn't skydived, and my sister was there, my mum and dad, and it was the first time the tandem instructor, I was outside filming us, and the first time the tandem instructor had jumped the whole family, and it was really, really cool. Very, very special moment. Yeah.
That sounds like a big perfect moment.
Big perfect moment. Yeah.
Take us inside this grueling next stage. You're facing your own mortality. Are they giving you percentages or numbers or likelihood? Like, are you seeking that information?
Yeah, I did. I seeked that information at the start of my diagnosis, but my my specialist, Peter, never gave it to me, but I asked registrars and other people, and the numbers were around 20 to 30% survivalhood. You know, it wasn't very good. There was no kind of, with tumour cancers, you know, you get this kind of number, but I was about percentages, you know, it wasn't stage. There were no stages with it. So yeah, that was my percentage, 10 to 30%, give or take. But then again, that's across the board. People get acute myeloid leukemia who are much older than I, and I was young. So as Peter said, my doctor, that was my advantage of getting through what I was going to go through.
Now, is it stem cell transplant?
Yeah, it's called an allogenic stem cell transplant.
Okay.
So I'll describe it to you. So our immune system is derived from these special cells called hematopoietic stem cells, the little stem cells that live in our bone marrow, and they create myeloid and lymphoid cells, so our red blood cells and our white blood cells, basically our immune system. So I had this mutation of what was going on between my myeloid cells, my white blood cells. These little blast cells, these are mature cells that weren't maturing into full white blood cells. They would just keep making these blast cells. So there was a breakdown in the factory of what made my immune system, if that makes sense. So this whole immune system, these stem cells, would have to be replaced. And when they presented this to me, I thought, why don't you just give me a blood transfusion? But they had to replace that core crux of the immune system, these hematopoietic stem cells that live in our bone marrow. And it's a complicated procedure to be able to do that.
And do they have to find an exact match?
Yeah, the best option is an exact match, and that's like a sibling donor.
Right.
Where we've got this thing called the MHC. It's called the major histocompatibility complex, human leukocyte antigen. So these proteins have to match. So basically, they detect foreign protein from your own protein. So they need to line up. So this new immune system doesn't attack your body. So that's the best match to have is a sibling donor. That's what you want, or a twin. Twin's the ultimate. But my siblings didn't line up. They weren't a match, so I'd have to have a foreign donor, a young girl from Germany, which blew my mind. So this young girl, she was donating her stem cells because they've got a registry over there. New Zealand doesn't have one because we've got European ancestry, but they do like Maoris and Pacifica. So if there's any Maori people and Pacifica people, get on that registry, put your name down, you could save a life. So yeah, so my transplant was coming from a young girl in Germany, so it was a bit of a mismatch. The proteins weren't going to align.
Tell us about this connection with this girl in Germany, because you kind of knew her name before you'd heard her name.
Yeah, how did you find that out?
Done our research.
It was remarkable. It really was. So I had this, the build up to it was horrendous. Had this transplant, and I got to see the bag, and it said Dresden, which we can talk about towards the end. Dresden is a city in Germany, and I could speak a bit of German at the time because I had a girlfriend who was from Germany, and I always used to say my Spender kommt aus Dresden. And during this time, which means my donor comes from Germany, and during this time I wrote a letter to her. I was allowed to say thank you, but it was censored of where I was from, what my name was, all scribbled out. But I said thank you and sent her a postcard of the West Coast, sent it to her, said thanks. And then later on, this is about 18 months, 2 years later, I get an email from a certain person when I'm working at the Skydive Drop Zone again in Motueka. I get an email saying, hey, we've got an email from your donor. I said, no, you don't. No, you don't. What's going on? And what she had done is she had emailed all this, because I've told her I'm a skydiver, emailed all the South Island skydiving centres.
Holy shit.
I said, do you know a guy who's had a transplant? Of course there was none. So yeah, Rebecca at the office emailed me, and then we were emailing, and I thought, no, I've got to go say thank you. Got to go say thanks. And I went over to Germany and said thank you to her, gave her a hug, and it was just surreal. I really was lost for words. No amount of thank yous can thank someone for what she did. And we created a special bond. It felt like I was looking at a replica of myself in a way. I was really, really blown away. You know, I had part of her DNA in me now. I had her immune system. We're blood brothers for life, you know. And so we sparked up a relationship, and I've met her a few times, been over there a few more times, and her sister came out to stay with us, and we messaged quite a lot, and I keep in contact. So
that's a fucking incredible story. Like to meet the person the stranger that's literally saved your life.
Yep.
is, I don't know the odds of that being, but in that moment when you lock eyes with that person for the first time, is it just an overwhelming wave of emotion?
I cannot describe it, Shay. I can't describe it, but yeah, I just grabbed her and hugged her and just said thank you so much, hands on two shoulders, looked into her eyes, and I just said thank you. And I said, but thank you doesn't justify what one means. But yeah, it was a beautiful moment, and I'm so glad that she was able to donate, because you're not allowed to have contact with your donors. This is a big thing as well, because a lot of people in the past have taken advantage of the situation, like an IOU, you owe me now, and they've tracked them down and said, oh, I've got no money, I gave you that, can you give me this kind of thing? So that's why they don't allow it. So it was a real privilege to be able to meet my donor, and she's a lovely, lovely girl, amazing girl. And we've actually, my daughter, that's her middle name, is Hannah. So it goes to your question, you called her Hannah. I saw her on that bag from Dresden, and I thought, spontaneously, I just said, I'm just going to call her Hannah. This is before the letter, and I just said, I'm going to call her Hannah. I don't know why. I don't know why. But I always referenced her as Hannah. Hannah sent me a bone marrow, but her name was Hannah when she sent me that email. And it was like it was meant to be.
That's so cool. I don't want to tell your story for you, but is the worst still to come? Is the suicide disease part of it, the pain you experienced? Is this in the right order that this is happening?
Yep, it's happening. So I had that transplant, I had 2 months of chemotherapy, and during this time, I got neutropenic sepsis. And I had a friend who I'd made, he's a farmer from Invercargill, he was 36 with 2 kids, and he passed away. He was about to have a transplant. He did have a transplant, got sepsis, neutropenic sepsis. Neutropenia means no immune system, low white blood cells. Sepsis is a bacteria of the blood, deadly. So he passed away, and then I got this. And I got sent up to the intensive care unit, put on life support, and they told my mum and dad, hey, he might not wake up. But God willing, after 10 days, I woke up miraculously, still a miracle. And I was 51, 52 kg. I was skinny, I couldn't walk, I couldn't talk. And this goes to the transplant, which is still unique in itself. The normal protocol from having that 2 month of chemotherapy, you have 2 months rest, because this is the worst of the worst. They annihilate you with full body irradiation, total toxic chemotherapy, so your immune system doesn't grow back, because normal chemotherapy depletes your immune system, it grows back, depletes your immune system, grows back. This had to be eradicated, so it's like Fukushima, nuclear, exploding. We had to rebuild it from new. The normal protocol, 2 months. I got out of ICU, I was in a wheelchair, skinny as an alien, bald head, getting pushed around. I had 2 weeks to get ready for this transplant, because Hannah could only donate at this time because she had organised her travels, what she was doing. And it was like, there's a good chance you're not going to survive this transplant. So that 2 week period, all I did was go down in the wheelchair. If you're at the Antigua boat shed, I used to sit on the green shed, close my eyes, pray, meditate, visualise myself, strong and healthy and happy, being up in base camp, sharing nice moments with my friends, connecting with my family, and just closed my eyes and focused on the connections that I had. And that's all I did. And then I had that 2 weeks, and then I had the transplant, had that treatment, the full body irradiation, the toxic chemotherapy. I was in the semi-comatose state for 3 months. And then from the transplant, you acquire this thing called graft versus host disease, because we spoke about it before. It wasn't a complete match. I had this mismatch. The proteins weren't aligning. So this new immune system was attacking my body. It was killing me. And we talk about spraying the ceilings in Nepal. I was just depleted. I was shitting myself 50 plus times a day, spewing up. Just the body was rejecting itself. And my pump next to me just looked like a sci-fi machine. It was just bags of everything. But how good are nurses, Shay?
They're amazing people.
Mate, nurses were absolutely amazing. They're coming in, they're wiping my bum. I shit my jocks. They're taking my clothes home to wash and bring back. I've never experienced authentic care in my life, been in such dire situation. They're holding my hand, they're crying with me. They just want the best for me, and they're doing everything possible to help me through. So it was in that 3 month period, and I got myself through there. And I was in Christchurch for about another year. I had multiple complications from this transplant. They're trying to align the steroids and the immunosuppressants to get the transplant, the immune system in adequate level, so it's tampered down a bit, that it could function, but it couldn't function too much. So a year there, and then that's when I went over to see Hannah. When I got better, I got out, went over to see Hannah, meet her, And then when I was in Germany, I got pneumonia. So I was in hospital, in Berlin hospital for a week, got flown back. And I was going back and forth in the mind, you know, not what's going on. But then I went down to see Ben, actually, towards the end of the year, hung out with him in Wanaka, come back, and my face flared up. And this is what we talk about, this worst pain. My face flared up. It started off at shingles, and it's a massive red face. You'll see it, good picture in my book. And I knew it was something, for some reason I just knew it was something more. So I said to the people in Greymouth Hospital, take me to Christchurch, I need to go to the bone marrow unit. Once I got there, this pain just flared up in my head. And I've spoken about pain earlier, but this was just something that I've never ever felt before. So it turned out to be this thing called trigeminal neuralgia, which is described as a suicide disease, because 20 to 30% of people who get this take their life because the pain is horrendous. And I describe the pain as someone's got like a cheese grater behind my eye, or there's a knife coming in on the side, or my face is on fire. It was immense. And I had every pain medication you could think of to try and get this down, but nothing was working. So they ring up the UK for a pain protocol, and they don't do this now. So what I had to do was get this lignocaine infusion, go up into the ICU room and get lignocaine. Lignocaine's an anaesthetic that we utilise to stop the nerves. And I had big boluses of it, so it could stop the heart. Hence the reason I had to go into the intensive care unit to get this, so it could stop the heart. And thank goodness it worked for me. It numbed the nerve. I still feel a tingling sensation down the left-hand side of my face. But that pain it is incredibly painful. And I have no words to describe how painful that was, apart from that analogy that I just spoke about.
And how many times was that pain constant? Did it come and go? And how long was that pain with you for?
So it was really acute, and I could feel it manifest. You could feel it come, and then I'd hit the pain button, the morphine button. I was just on constant morphine and fentanyl. I love fentanyl. Just bang, 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 bang. But it wasn't touching the sides, and I feel it, and I'm just screaming. And I remember holding Courtney, the nurse's hand, and she's holding, and she's got tears in her eyes. Like, she was helpless. That's all she could do. And I'm just squeezing her hand, just crying, and it would last for about maybe 2 to 3 minutes, and then just die down again. And I'm exhausted. I go to sleep, and then so I probably had about maybe over 30 episodes of that until they sent me up into the intensive care room to get that lignocaine infusion.
And I have heard you describe this before, and I thought it was a short period of time, maybe, like these episodes happened in a day, and then you had the surgery. It was like a 3-month period, right?
Yeah. It was. I was in there for 3 months. Yep, back in the bone marrow unit. I was in there for 3 months
with this pain. Coming and going.
Living on morphine, living on fentanyl, tramadol. It was crazy. And I was on high dose gabapentin. Gabapentin kind of blocks the nerves, the neuron signals, and I was talking like this. I couldn't talk. And my whole motor function was just shut down, and I was just a zombie. I was a real zombie.
In those moments, are you still holding on to the small, perfect moments? Is that the things that keep you going and keep you fighting? Yeah,
it's a multitude of a lot of things, Shay. It is holding on to that love. It's holding on to those moments with Ben at Everest Base Camp. It's holding on to that thing that I was able to run. But it's holding on to the love that I do have for people, particular individuals. And it's coming back to Viktor Frankl. We've always got a choice. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Hold on for that. Hold on for that. This pain will reside. You've got to hold on to that faith. And that's what I held on to, that this won't last forever. And I just had faith that this won't last forever, but I'm holding on to those small things, that love, those nostalgic moments to pull me through that horrendous pain. And thank goodness it did.
This is an insane story, Josh. Like, there's still more to come, but you get through this and link us up to Wim Hof and cold immersion and what happens next and the timeline of what's going on.
Yep. So I go through that trigeminal neuralgia. It's dampened down, but the graft versus host disease, that where the immune system's attacking my body, just flares up, and the immunosuppressants and the steroids aren't doing its job anymore. They don't work because this graft versus host disease is out of control. And you can see in my skin it's a bit pigmented, but I developed this thing called GVHD, graft versus host disease scleroderma. So it's like a thickening of the skin. So I turned into like I don't know if you've seen The Wizard of Oz, where he's got no oil. I was just stuck in my own body. I couldn't bend over. I was just completely stuck. It was just the fascia and collagen were gluing itself together, and I couldn't move, and the pigmentation was deteriorating from my skin. So they had to send me over to Melbourne to get treatment, because we don't have this treatment over here. It's called ECP, extracorporeal photopheresis, at the Peter MacCallum Centre in Melbourne. So I got sent over there, and I had high hopes on this treatment. There was only 2 or 3 Kiwis at the time that were getting treatment over there, and then they left, and I was getting treatment. One lady in particular, Tracy Martin, who was a great friend. We stayed at this place called the Quest. So I was getting treatment there, and I had high hopes, and it was going okay. The body was starting to free itself up, but I was experiencing, what I was getting to at night was these horrendous night cramps, like from my hips to my legs would just lock up. And there was a time when I was in Melbourne, when my brother was there, I locked up for 2.5 days, 3 days, and I couldn't walk, It was just, my hands and my rib cage was just stuck. It's like someone was squeezing you. And that's kind of the disease I was in. But things were starting to get better in that first 3-month period. And my mate, Matt Walker, sends me this Vice documentary of Wim Hof. And I was like, wow, man, he's cool. And he's talking about the immune system, and I understand what cytokines are, and I understand the immune system, and he's putting all this together, and it really made sense to me. And talking about inflammation. And so I start doing this 2-week course, cold showers and breathing, really get into it. I'm hitting it hard. And I feel a bit of goodness come inside me, I'm having the cold shower, and I feel quite good, a bit positive. I ring up. So I go on the course, and I see that he's coming to Melbourne. So I ring up this guy who's the manager, and I say, hey, can I go on the course? And he goes, where are you right now? And I said, I'm staying up in the Parliament building, the Quest. And he's down in Fed Square right now. Come down. He's next to him. So I walk down, and there's Wim Hof with his top on, doing things to Channel 9 and
This one.
hoo-haing around. And then he comes over for a conversation, and I have a really good conversation. He's just glowing light. He's just got this radiance about him. I've never seen anything like it before, and I thought, wow, I want what he wants. So I booked myself into this retreat, this Wim Hof retreat, and that's a few months later. But I'm really excited about it. And then doing the treatment, things are going okay. I'm pretty stable. But in the background, I've had this lingering pain in my chest. That's hanging on a bit there. And I've had all these tests, and I had high troponin levels. I did stress tests, had an angiogram. They didn't do anything. So nothing really got done. But they done the test, and they knew something wasn't right, but nothing happened. And finally, I got to go to the Wim Hof retreat. I was booked on. I was so excited. And the first table I went to, I sat down to this guy called Lars and Mark Mullen. Mark Mullen was a former Australian kickboxing champ, and Lars was a Swedish guy, so like a Swedish Viking, but he'd spent time in Okarito, which was down south from Wataroa, where my dad grew up. So we started, and I was really excited. It was a really cool group of guys. Went to bed, and I woke up, and I had a heart attack. And I was in the bed for about 40 minutes before I asked someone to help me. And I was trying to sit up, and the pain in my chest would just cramp down. I couldn't get out of bed. And Guy Lawrence, he was the founder of 180 Nutrition, bit of a big brand in Australia. He come and put his hand on my shoulder because I said, hey, I can't get out of bed. And he sat there, they rang the ambulance, and they took me to Geelong Hospital from the retreat. And this was another time where I hit rock bottom. It's like, fuck, man, you can't do anything. Whatever you try to do, something pulls back on you. And I really didn't want to have these heart issues. I just didn't want to have heart issues. Cancer was fine, but I just didn't want heart issues, and got taken to Geelong Hospital. Had 2 heart attacks there, and it was the first time ever I swore at a doctor. It's like, fuck off, you don't know me, I was hysterical, I really was. And they put me in the isolation room because I was just going off, and I had 2 there. They sent me to Peter MacCallum Cancer Centre where I was getting treatment. My doctor was there, Simon Harrison, and he got to see these heart attacks. I was flipping the ECG upside down. And I had 3 more there, and then they sent me over to the Melbourne Hospital, the Royal Cardiac Unit over there, and I think I had another 6 heart attacks there. It was just crazy. It was so crazy, but I was in the cardiac unit, and the doctor there, they didn't know what to do with me. Because of this thickening of the skin, they didn't know whether to give me a heart bypass or stent my left main artery. They didn't know what to do. They hadn't come across a patient like myself before. What were the risks involved? And it was funny. I laugh at it now. It wasn't funny at the time, but the doctor comes in, and there were the Rio Olympics on, and 2 of my former competitors, Hamish Carson and Julian Matthews, were on doing the 15. I was so excited for them. It was great. And they said, well, Josh, you've won the gold medal for the most talked about patient in the hospital.
Looking at your little CV, like, what the?
Yeah, so they were peeking out, but they wouldn't make a decision, boys. And so I wrote the doctor a letter. I had to write him a letter. I said, I don't care if I live or die. Just back yourself and make a decision and do something with me. Learn from me as a patient. Whatever happens, just do something. Next day, heart attack, flip the ECG upside down in the cath lab. They decided to stent my left main. And that was done. Yeah, so that was the lead up to the Wim Hof. And, and I had those heart attacks. But from that my GVHD had flared up from being in such a stress state, high inflammation. So I had to go on intensive treatment again.
Man, it's so much, eh? But then again, like you're here, you're healthy, we beat this, but the cold immersion side has stuck with you. That part has become, as we spoke about at the start, like a core piece of your life. So is that, talk about how much that helps you.
Yep. So I got out and I pushed it away for a little bit, but I sent a thank you message. There was a group chat for this Wim Hof retreat. I said a thank you to the guy that rang the ambulance and put his hand on my shoulder and cared for me for that hour period, and it was Guy Lawrence, and they were all excited that I was okay. So he had actually done a podcast with this guy called Dave O'Brien from Fifth Element Wellness, who was on the course as well, and he sent me the link to it. He goes, have a listen to this. So I started listening, and yeah, it was awesome. Dave O'Brien had this holistic health centre called Fifth Element, and he was talking about gut health, he was talking about the immune system, he was talking about training, he was sauna, cold therapy, breathing, meditation, all these things that I'm dabbling in but haven't quite engrossed myself in yet. And I thought, I've got to go check this in. It's just outside of Brunswick in Melbourne. And so I go down to meet Dave O'Brien and really immerse myself. And once I walked in the door, there's this guy there called Mark Claw, and he's become a fantastic friend, great guy. And he looks at me, drops his weights, mate, just drops it. He goes, Joshy, real Australian, Joshy, is that you, mate? I'm like, who the fuck are you? He's got this big beard. It's like a pirate who's got his treasure, mate. And he picks me up, literally picks me up. He goes, oh, mate, it's so bloody good to see you. It's fucking great. And I thought, man, we spoke about places, what you resonate with people. This place engrossed me. And I chatted with Dave, and he's like, right, we're going to do a whole complete gut protocol with you, installing supplements and do all this. And gym program. Gave me a personal trainer, Anthony Messino, great friend. He's still my trainer today. Done wonders with him, and it was just a place where I immersed myself in, where I got a lot out of myself. But it wasn't until I had my first cold bath, my ice bath. I still hadn't had a full ice bath yet, and I was shitting myself, boys. I was terrified. But I'd seen all the scientific validation, and Dave's talking about, Anthony's talking about, Marky's there. So we go round to Mark Claw's house. Mark Mullen, the guy on the retreat I spoke about, the Australian kickboxing champ, Lars is there. So we've got 4 boys there, and the big bulky men, and I'm skinny as 55 kg, and I've recently had this stent in my left main, and I'm trying to work myself up. And I ask myself, what the heck are you doing? But then it comes back to writing that letter to the doctor. It's like, mate, you got to back yourself here. You know there's something here. And I've done all the research. I've looked at it. You know there's something here. And we do the breathing session. We get in the bath, the boys are around me. Come on, Joshy, get in there, mate, breathe. And I just shut my eyes down. If we shut our eyes, we take away 50% of our sensory input. I focused on my breathing, and I took control of this acute, stressful situation, full control. And I felt that pain come, and I wanted to get out, but I took control, closed my eyes down, focused on my breathing. And so I was in there for 5 minutes, and I got out, and I started crying, and I started running for the first time down Marky's corridor, 30 metres, and I was like, holy shit, I feel fucking amazing. I feel so good. I survived that when I thought maybe I could die from those heart attacks, and yeah, it was a beautiful moment in my life, to be fair. Yeah, it was a transcendent moment in a way. I went deep within myself, and I found something. You know, I felt Josh Komen, that old school Josh Komen up in the Paparoas, overcome that pain that he was feeling, and I got through it. But we can get used to things such as running, you know, you can adjust to that. But this was something completely new, this acute sympathetic state where all that blood is rushing from the extremities to the core to protect myself. I wanted to get out, but controlling that mentally, that was profound for me. And then having that dopamine effect afterwards, just mental clarity that I hadn't had, real mental clarity for many years. I hadn't had that was so powerful that I became addicted. It was just my go-to foundational wellness practice.
Can you compare that feeling in the ice bath to the 200 bend on the runs? Is it a similar comparison of that fucking burn when you're running to that fight when you're in the cold? Are they comparative emotions, or am I drawing a really long bow?
No, Shay, it's a great question, because I think about this a lot, because I've had numerous experiences in my life, especially with skydiving and running and feeling something intrinsic within yourself. But it is completely different. It's unique in itself, because not everybody wants to go out there and run. Not everybody wants to jump out of a plane. But the ice, we all respond to it the same. And for me, it was just toning down that acute sympathetic state, that stress state, and coming into a parasympathetic state when I'm just immersing my body in cold. Like, I'm physically doing something when I'm skydiving or running. I'm physically actively doing that, but I'm just sitting in cold water, and my body's saying, get the heck out of there. But I'm in my mind like, no, I'm okay, and I'm focusing on my breathing, something that we can take conscious control of as well. Our breath, and then I work on my mind and I say, no, Josh, you've got this. And then you come into this parasympathetic state, and it's beautiful. And I run workshops and I see it with people. It's amazing to watch. People are so fearful getting in the ice. But if we calm ourselves down with the breath, we focus on the fact that we are here, we are capable, and we spoke about that potential within ourselves, you find this inner spirit. And then you come into this parasympathetic state where we activate the vagus nerve, and you see it. You see the smile come. And I get emotional when I see this on people, because I've found something inside themselves that they haven't seen before or felt before, because feeling is understanding. You can describe things to people, but you have to feel it. And I've seen it before, and I felt it within myself, and I get emotional when I see it with people, because it's the same feeling I got. And you can get it too. You can get it too. We can all do this, just exposing ourselves to cold. But it's the feeling afterwards, that dopaminergic effect that we get as well, and that mental clarity I haven't felt after a great run or jumping out of a plane.
You do such a good job. You're so articulate at sharing the story. I mean, this has been so gripping. Thank you so much. The hardship we have talked about leads us to where we're getting to now, and the reflections on it and what you've learned. But before then, I want to talk about perhaps one of the best parts of this journey, and that's Sibille. And I want to talk about when you met and that plane ride.
Yeah, Sibby. It's probably about the best part of the story, eh? It's what makes that pain worthwhile. So I'm flying back and forth at this stage. It's about 3 years into my treatment, and I had 5 years in Melbourne in total. I'm about 3 years into it, and I'm flying back and forth, and I'm sitting on the plane, and the whole plane's full, ironically, and there's one seat between me and this girl. And she's a beautiful girl, blonde girl. And I start talking to her. I say, hey, how are you? Because I'm feeling better now. I'm engaging with people. I say, hey, how you going? You know, what are you up to? She goes, oh. She had like a German accent. I said, oh, where are you from? She said, oh, Switzerland. Oh, cool. What are you doing? She's just backpacked around New Zealand, done a yoga training course and done all these cool things. And now she's going over to Australia to do another yoga course and backpack around. And we got conversing, had a great conversation. And then I asked her what she did. No, she's asking me what I did in Melbourne. What am I doing? What am I doing? I said, I'm going to see my brother, and he was living there at the time. And I got told her that's the truth. And then I asked her, what do you do in Switzerland? What do you do for a job? And she's an oncology nurse, a cancer nurse, out of all things. I said, oh, wow. So I thought, I'll tell her the truth. I'm actually going over here for the special treatment, ECP. Have you heard of that before? And she said, no, I've never. So I sparked. I say in the talks, I said, I don't recommend this as a pickup line, but I said to her, do you want to come and see some cancer treatment? Do you want to come and see it? And she's like, oh, yeah, sure. Cool. And I was like, yeah, right, whatever. I said, that's great. So meet me at Parliament Building at 9 a.m. My treatment was at 10. And, yeah, we'll go from there. That's the next day. And I didn't think she'd turn up. I really didn't. You know, she's doing her thing. Like, who wants to come and see 3 hours of ECP, my blood taken out and put back in? But she was there. She turned up. And it's one of my big values is when you say something, you back that up. And she backed up her word. And to this day, I've probably had over 250 treatments. And it was the only time, to this day, that it was delayed.
Really?
It was, yep, true. And it was delayed to 1 p.m. So unfortunately for her, we had to spend the morning together. So we shot down to Vic Market. We got a coffee, sat there for a bit, and we had a lot in common. Great convo. She came back and watched the treatment. She spent the whole day with me. And then we got messaging, and we spent the week together. And shared our first kiss in Fitzroy Park up the top there. And we talk about health, but the relationships that we forge, it's the foundation. And I talk about all these holistic practices, yeah? But having her by my side and finding her, I found my true worth. She brought the best out of me, I want to give you an example of what this girl is and what she's done. At the time I was flying back and forth to Melbourne, getting treatment. I had no job. I was on $272 on a sickness benefit. I was living at home with my mum and dad. She chose to come over and be with me. She's a special, special person. And we've been together for over 5 years now, and we got married. And bit of laughter here from that sperm sample collection. It wasn't too bad after all. Maybe Sibs was just quite fertile, but we had a young daughter, Maya Hannah, after our bone marrow donor. And I'm truly blessed for what I have in my life right now. And we spoke about it at the start. How are you? I've got that perspective of where I've been through. We've spoken about all that, but what I have in front of me, this amazing woman, this daughter. Here I was about to take my life and got the opportunity to give life, put life back into the world. She's a beautiful wee girl, and I spoke about it before, the people that we connect with, that's the foundation of health. So that's why I try to see the heart within people, see the good, see where they've been through the turmoil, the chaos. And that's why I love doing these ice bath workshops and seeing that spirit come out in people, seeing that capability that we can pull ourselves to base camp and back with our own backpack, because we're capable of more than we think. And going through that 10 years of arduous physical pain, mental pain, but having found that quintessential love from my wife and daughter, the nurses, my mum, all that, I don't let that go. I hold on to that for dear life, because that's all I've got when I've got nothing else. So
we've been in touch with Sibille, and she's shared with us a few yarns, and you talk about perhaps not being the most attractive option for her at the time. I think anyone that's listened and got this far through the episode will see exactly what she saw in you. Like the spirit, the man you are is just incredibly captivating. But you said you were surprised she turned up. She gave us another reason why she was hesitant about perhaps turning up. She said there was a bit of an odour on the plane, and she couldn't quite put her finger on what it was until she discovered it. Do you know what this is?
You got to wonder why she stayed with me. You really do after this. So I'm on the plane, and my feet cramp up as I spoke about, and I take my shoes off. I take my shoes off, and I've got stinky feet, real bad. But I didn't care beforehand. Like, I'm talking to this beautiful girl, and she's they reeked her out 'cause she's got a really, really good nose, sensitive smell. Like, she knows when something's off, even the most skewed piece of smell. So, Yeah, she eventually told me, she's like, I seriously was contemplating not coming to be with you because you had sticky feet.
Amazing guy. Like, holy shit, this guy, but those feet.
Yeah, mate. She's Swiss. She's clean to a T. So I've got to keep everything clean. She's up my game on cleanliness. Yeah, she's amazing. So she's told me that. She goes, I was seriously contemplating not being with you because of your feet. But no, she enjoyed the odour. And she's been by my side. So
yeah, they say like attracts like, right? So if you see all those amazing qualities in her, it's easy to see why she's chosen you as well.
Yeah, it's hard to comprehend at that time. I mean, I look at it from anyone's aspect. If you met someone who's getting life-saving treatment, living at home with their mum and dad, no money, $272 and stinky feet, you're probably not going to go there. Chances are it's lower survival rates than what I had with cancer. But she stuck on.
Had you closed the door on love and finding someone at that stage?
Yeah, such a good question, because I had a previous girlfriend before that, and I don't really go into that too much, but that's another story in itself. A lot happened there, and I did close that door. And I said to a good friend, I said, fuck, push them aside. I'll wait till someone comes into my life and wants to be with me and they see me for who I am, and I waited for that girl. So, yeah, great question. It's got a whole different story in itself. But yeah, I did close that door.
As we get towards the end of the journey, I want to bring in, we've got a few voices to bring in. I'm going to read a few things of the impact that you've had on others. So we spoke to Rachel, your sister, and I'm just going to read what she sent us. She said, "It was so hard as a younger sibling watching your older brother, who in my eyes had always been so strong and tough, to then be in a situation where he was so weak and powerless. And then when he did overcome his cancer, he was a completely different person, not just in his physical appearance, but also his personality, his beliefs, his priorities. So there was a time there that I went through a bit of a grieving process because he was no longer the brother I had known for 21 years. He was different, and we had to get to know each other again as this new version of Josh. He's been the Josh before cancer, the Josh during, and the Josh after. Mr. Split Personality, lol. But it was an absolute privilege to walk beside him during the journey, and it's definitely changed our whole family unit for the better. So the first part to reflect on is the changing of that family unit and the dynamic, and we've spoken about how it's brought you closer to your dad, but everyone is obviously intertwined in this journey you've been on. And can you just talk about what that's like now?
So during the journey itself at Ranui House, everyone had a part to play there. Rachel sacrificed her flat and come and looked after me. I pushed mum away, and when I was in Melbourne, my brother was there as my caretaker. I called him the caretaker. He was there holding my hand. He became my big brother. I couldn't do much. I've seen so much pain inside myself and seen so many tears, and those tears have brought us together. And that's why I think pain serves a purpose, and really collaborating a family and friends together. It's the authentic thing that binds us together, and we found true love, and we really understood one another for our own individual differences. Because me and my sister, we are different, but what brings us together is that deep love. And when everything was lost, my family was always there, no matter about our differences. And we spoke about love before. When I broke up with my previous girlfriend, my sister was the first one I confided in. I flew over to Brisbane to see her. My brother, 7 years younger than me, looking after his big brother, who took him for his first step down the hallway. The family just was more cohesively together, and got to understand my dad and my mum, that quintessential mum, that love that resonated out within the family, just grabbed us together and held us together as a family, and it did bring us closer. And it's like Jake's doing his thing, Rachel's doing his thing, her thing. But what holds us together is that love that's endured and been exposed through that hard, chaotic time.
Hard and chaotic is right. And I want you to reflect now that those that are here that have heard the journey. We spoke about it at the start, and Ruth mentioned it, suffering. You've suffered. You have been to the depths of the worst things that anyone has ever been to, and you've come out the other side, and you're grateful for it. Can you talk about suffering and your position on it?
Yeah, it's such a interesting question to ask, and I think about this so often. But it comes back to Viktor Frankl for man's search for meaning for me, it's finding meaning within your suffering. And if the world was perfect and everything was great, we wouldn't take those small opportunities. We wouldn't embrace them as what we would. And I've never felt authentic care when I've been on my deathbed. A handhold is different when you succeed in running from when you're essentially dying. It's tighter. It's more firm. It's the fabric. It brings that true love out, that someone cares for you. Like I found my dad when I saw him cry. Without that pain, without that suffering, I don't feel that we find true humanity for what it's worth. And I see a lot of people give for causes where people need, and a big part of that is giving back, and so many people have given to me to help me through what I've been through in such an authentic manner that I've really found their true inner spirit. And that pain, that suffering brings out the best in people. Not like running a race and finishing in the fastest time, but the best in people of what their human spirit is. Because we take people as face value sometimes. And when I've been on my deathbed, when I've been in complete pain and suffering, I've seen that wonderful human spirit, that heart in people, bringing out the best in me to say, hey, keep going, Josh, keep going. So that suffering brings purpose, and that comes back to Viktor Frankl, what he talks about in logotherapy. There's always meaning within our suffering, and the meaning is love. And we have to hold on to that.
It's an incredibly powerful message. Before I wrap up and bring in the last few, there's one that we skipped over, which is your record ice bath. Recently, you were all over the news and the headlines, and sort of it captured my attention. It seemed like there was a huge community of support, people that knew your story and came around to celebrate this thing. But talk about why you did it and how long and all the details.
Yeah, it was a very, very special moment. I've been wanting to give back to Ranui House. Me and my family spent 482 nights there. You break that down in rent rates, that's a lot of money. And I've been wanting to give back to this place, and it's a big value of mine, always, give back somehow, and I didn't know how. But I've become obsessed with ice bath and running workshops and that, and I thought, this would be a cool idea. We'll make an unofficial ice bath record. It was never about a record, and I know people out there have done longer ice baths than what I did it for, but for me, it captured that 21-minute segment on TV. 7 Sharp were into it, and so I pitched it to Ranui House, and there was a lady there called Jodie Gill. She actually organised the Party in the Mouth with Radio Hauraki. Yeah, she's a great lady, and she saw the smile on her face and twiddled her fingers and said, I think we could do something here. And she said to me, how much do you want to raise? And I said, between maybe 30 grand would be great. That would be really, really cool. And she just ran with it and put it out there and got the media involved. And we set up this unofficial ice bath record. 7 Sharp were there filming. Jenny Harper did a wonderful job, and New Zealand got around it. And it was 21 minutes in the ice bath. And it was the coldest day in Christchurch for a March calendar month for 14 years. It was 4 degrees outside. It was blowing a southerly. And it was a big emotional day because I had a lot of really good friends that had come out, and they was in the support baths, a lot of great people. Doctors and nurses were there. There were other support baths. My company, Electronet, were there. Everyone was there that just meant something to me. Especially the doctors and nurses came over and gave it a go. And the Breeze Radio were there in the morning, and I did an ice bath with them. So it was this big day, really big day. And so I got into the ice bath, and the coolest thing that doesn't get mentioned is my wife and good friend Hamish were in a bath next to me, and they did 20 minutes.
Did they?
They did 20 minutes next to me, and you don't see that on the cameras. It was, essentially on me, but Sib's got in the bath. When I pitched it to her, she goes, I'm getting in there too to show women that they can do this as well. Wow. And it was a freaking cold day, and it was 0.8 degrees in that ice bath. And I don't have the best circulation. It has improved from what I've been doing. But it was tough. But she was there. She got out of the bath and upstairs breastfeeding Maya in that next moment. And I think the money we raised before I went in the bath was around 40,000. And then 7 Sharp did this awesome segment, and I got out. And I'm like this frozen little white bait red, mate. And I'm mildly hypothermic. Yeah. And my nervous system's shutting down. and she's talking, and I can't even remember saying what I said. I said something like, the West Coast white mate migrated from the Grey River now into the ice bath. West Coast white mate out. And Ruth showed me this afterwards, and I couldn't even remember saying it. But we got out, and it was $65,000. I went over with my mate Hamish. We had a shower, half an hour, 40 minutes, came back, and we got up to about 85,000. Then we managed to raise about 105,000 for Ranui House.
Amazing.
It was incredible. It was amazing. It was beyond my expectations. So a bit of a shout out to the New Zealand public for getting behind Ranui House and what we did that day. And 21 minutes, I know it's not an actual record, but it was just so cool to give back to a quality cause that gives to so many people, because Ranui House, it doesn't only look after bone marrow patients, cancer patients, it looks after everyone. So for example, if you had a car crash, you needed to go into the intensive care unit for 6 weeks, your family could come and stay for free. So you don't only suffer with your health, you can suffer with your finances too, and that's a bit of a financial lifeline that they do so much for families.
But before we leave cold immersion, have you got an ice bath question? Before we leave cold immersion, so I love getting into Lake Taupo whenever I can, whenever I'm down there, because that's my hometown. I feel like I connect back to the place. Do you have a preference between ice bath and cold immersion and natural water streams?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got an ice bath at home, and I love getting in that different times of the day. That's basically for mental resilience. You know, I might do it at 9 p.m. at night, 6 in the morning, after work, whatever. But there's a saying in the Māori culture, Tūrangawaewae, a place where you feel connected. I've got 2 special places up the 10 Mile and Arthur's Pass at Avalanche Falls, where I get into nature and the cold water. And I'm truly one with myself, where I can connect with myself and the world itself. And for me, you know, I definitely choose outside of nature, in the rivers, especially the 10 Mile up there, and Avalanche Falls and Arthur's Pass. It's just a beautiful spot where I can connect with myself and the world around me and the people that love in my heart. And yeah, it's the ultimate mindfulness practice in my mind, you know, where you're acutely aware of oneself and where you are. So that's my Tūrangawaewae.
But if people are up there when you're up there, do they need to be upstream from you? Because is that where you're doing the old aqua dumps?
Who spelt this yarn?
Oh, it's just a genuine question. I'm just a curious guy asking a question about an aqua. I don't even know what an aqua dump might be. I've got an idea.
I think you've got an idea
of what it is. But I imagine you can only do them when you're out. You wouldn't do them in your home ice bath, would you? Surely not.
I don't know. This has come out of left field. You've either spoken to Sibs or Hamish. But yeah, this is true.
Nature.
Well, nature.
You know, I'm a bit like a dog, you know. You got to mark your territory. Okay, so I was with Sibs one day, and I said, "Go upstream, love. I'm letting something out." So yeah, let the old aqua dump out.
There you go.
Yeah, you part the cheeks.
Yeah.
You got to make sure you're facing the current, so it's pushing down, and then you turn around back to the current to get the good flush out.
Okay.
It's a really nice feeling.
And just in line with Sibs joining you for the ice bath, has she given that a go herself, that full technique in the river as well? You can put her on blast, because she gave her this yarn as well. So.
No, Sibby's too clean for that, mate.
Yeah,
she won't do that.
Yeah, that's Swiss ingenuity.
That's the Kiwi style right there.
Swiss precision is not going to allow that to happen in nature.
Yeah, Hamish cracks up about that too. I've let out a few, so.
Good things. Good things.
I've got a couple more voices to bring in before we finish. I just want to make sure you know how inspirational your story is. What we've just talked about, getting married, having a kid, raising money, speaking, going on podcasts, talking about this, is so helpful to so many. There'll be so many people listening to this right now who have been at a similar low ebb and just feeling full of life through your story. So thank you so much for coming and sharing. But I'm going to bring in Ben, because I had a great chat with him, and he had some really nice things to say. So Ben said, life is about perspective in a lot of ways, and Josh's story helps with that. When you're down or think things are challenging or at a low ebb, he helps to pull your head in. I think if he can overcome what he did, why can't I? He's one of the most inspirational people in the world. I'm proud of him. He's so special, a real treasure. I try spread the word about how good this guy is, but I almost feel bad about bragging that I know him. I watched his talk at a community group in Blenheim recently, and you could just see people in tears. He resonates on a deep level. I use him weekly for inspiration. He's also reached out to a lot of people in my life, and he's had the same effect on them. He's such a legend, and it's so important people get to hear his story. And I can't echo those words strongly enough. It's so important. It's so great that you're here where you are and able to tell the story. So thank you so much for coming in.
The words are humbling, but thank you guys for allowing me to speak on your platform. You guys do a wonderful job, and I know in some of your previous podcasts you've had like Mark Ellis and Lee Hart and all that on, and speaking about how much they had an impact on you. But I think in the future generation, you guys will have a future impact on the next generation of media. So you guys do a wonderful job, and thank you for allowing me and inviting me onto Between Two Beers. So all the best for your journey as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. That's so cool. I'm going to throw to Shay, who's going to wrap us up. But before then, I just had one last question of what your health journey looks like from here and how you approach the future. And is there fear of cancer coming back? Do you look at it as fear, or what your outlook is now?
Yeah. No, I don't look at it as fear. I accept that it could come back. It is a concern. The saddest thing about it is if it did, would I leave my wife and daughter? And that's the concern. So I try to be the best I can be at getting better with my health, and I invest a lot of finances and time in looking after my immune system, my mental health, everything like that, because I know if something does come back, I know I've done my utmost best to mitigate the cancer or any chronic illness. Am I fearful? No. Am I concerned? Yes, because that brings awareness and that makes me take action to look after myself. But yeah, that's kind of how I see it now, in a nutshell. Yeah.
Shay?
I'm going to borrow some words from Sibille to start this outro. She wrote to us and she said, "To me, Josh is the most wonderful person I know. His life experience brought him so much love and wisdom. He's got the ability to make deep, meaningful connections with people around him, and he wants to help people and bring the best out of them." 3 things I've taken out of this conversation. I've been fighting back tears almost since we started, because it's not tears for the situation that you've been in. It's a difficult emotion to feel. It's one of amazing gratitude, and one I'm really humbled to be in your presence and to hear your story. Perspective is so critical, and your ability to hone your craft of communication, the way you get your message across is so captivating, but so on point as well. And it's a story that needs to be shared as far and wide as possible. And I'm so thankful that we've got a platform that a lot of people are going to be able to hear this. And I've got immense gratitude for spending some time with you this morning. And you talk about small, perfect moments. And this episode that we've created, this moment that we've created between the 4 of us in this room, for me is a small, perfect moment that I will always look back on and be able to listen back to and pull some amazing nuggets of wisdom from someone who's lived a life and has a lot of life to live. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Shay. Thank you, Steve. Go well, boys.
Cheers, Josh.